Hey there, folks. Austin Baumgarten here with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana. We are on the podcast of the Hidden Homes Show tonight. This is podcast number 6, and we have ourselves a wonderful guest, someone that's been very influential in the community, been around the community for quite some time, and has an artist perspective as well as a business perspective, as well as being a downtown store owner for many, many years. I would like to introduce Marshall Noice of Montana Modern Fine Art and many other accolades. We're going to start off with a few things here. We've got Marshall moved to Kalispell from Minnesota in 1968, so he's been here for 54 years. Graduated from Flathead High School in 1969. Attended FVCC and University of Montana. Past president of the Hockaday Museum Board of Trustees, past president Rotary Club of Kalispell, past president Kalispell Business Improvement District Board of Directors, and currently serves on First Interstate Bank Board, as well as Montana State University College of Art Advisory Board. And he's also the father of my wife. So, Marshall Noice, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be here, Austin.
Excellent. Yeah. So Hidden Home Show, basically what we're trying to do here is we're talking about the community. We're talking about goals in the community sometimes, just like past, present, future. And the goal for this year basically is to kind of just like influence the community around us with just people that know a bit more about it than I do, and you do, being here for 54 years. So I would like to start off with some questions and just kind of find out basically your backstory.
Sure.
I know we read some of these things off, but I know there's a lot more about you. So give me a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you mentioned, grew up in Minnesota, moved here with my family in 1968. My dad took a job teaching at FVCC, and my sister and I were both in high school. And when we moved to Kalispell, I was a rock and roll musician. And when I got to town, I actually thought that I had found rock and roll heaven. There was so much music going on in Kalispell. There was live music at the Teen Center, which was on 3rd Avenue East. The building's still there. And they had live music at least one night a week. There was a nightclub downtown that was an underage nightclub. You could get a burger and fries and listen to rock and roll. And there were a lot of venues in downtown Kalispell, and it was just a great place to land. And honestly, we moved here because of Big Mountain. My folks had been coming out from Minnesota to ski at Big Mountain for years. And when my dad was kind of winding down his academic career and looking for something that was not too stressful, it was, let's go to the Flathead Valley. And I was excited about Glacier, and I was super excited about the Big Mountain, and I had no clue about Flathead Lake. I mean, and now that's the trifecta as far as I'm concerned. The Flathead Valley, Flathead Lake, Big Mountain, Glacier Park. I mean, is it any mystery why a lot of people want to live here?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So I finished my high school. I graduated from Flathead and went to FVCC, and kind of worked a little college in here and there around being on the road playing music. And after I tell people that I quit playing rock and roll when I had consumed every drop of truck stop coffee and stayed in every Holiday Inn in the United States, which in fact isn't true, but it's a good story. And I moved back to Kalispell, got interested in photography, went back to school at the Banff Center School of Fine Arts in Banff, Alberta, and studied photography there, and opened a photography studio. And just, it was an entrepreneurial lifestyle from day one. And my family has had a business on Main Street in Kalispell continuously since 1968.
Wow.
When we moved to town, my folks opened a record store. Not a bad thing for your parents to do if you're a musician. If you're a young aspiring rock and roller, to have your own record store. And it sort of became the hangout for for music lovers, and especially younger music lovers. This was in the day when Macintosh Music, which was one block north, I guess I'm getting into the changes in Kalispell already.
I like this. This is great.
They still had a listening room where you could actually take the record that you're interested in buying and put it on a turntable and go into this little closet and shut the door and listen to the record before you bought it to make sure you liked it.
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, actually. And it was, there was a ton of stuff for young people to do in downtown Kalispell then, much more so than now. And I don't know why that hasn't changed back, but it just seems like, unless it's school related or church related, there's just, that's about all we've got for kids in town these days. And not that that's bad, but it was definitely a different scene. It was a different time. There were lots of rock and roll bands on the road. You could stay at a Motel 6 for $6 a night. And you were paying 33 cents a gallon for gas. So you didn't have to make a whole lot of money to be on the road playing music. And a lot of those bands came to Kalispell.
Huh. That's really cool. I didn't really realize there was such a music scene, and I've heard a lot of different stories from different people from the 60s and 70s about how Flathead Valley, Kalispell was so much different. Downtown Kalispell was downtown Kalispell was kind of a big hub with not just nightlife, restaurants. There was a lot more going on.
No question. There was a lot of nightlife. And, when you got to the top of the hill where Emmanuel Lutheran Home is now, there was the Sundown Drive-In Theater. And then when you headed north, there was nothing. There was one building of a Forest Service building between Kalispell and Whitefish. That was it.
Oh my
and
gosh. It's filled in quite a bit.
It has filled in quite a bit, yeah. And I really think that another reason that downtown Kalispell was so vital back during that period of time was that FECC was functioning downtown.
Oh. There
were a bunch of buildings that were repurposed. The Elks Club being the biggest of them. Elks Club was a four-story building across the street from Western Outdoor, and that was the main building for the community college. And they used Central School for classrooms. There were two on First Avenue East, two buildings that had formerly been car dealerships that were turned into classroom spaces. And you think about it, you've got a couple thousand college kids walking around downtown between classes all the time. And my mom has a record store, and it just there was a lot of activity. When
I first moved here too, that was when the Liberty and the Strand were still movie theaters.
Yeah.
And that was back in the early, 2001.
That was a loss.
And that was a loss. It was a loss
for the culture of downtown Kalispell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's tie back into you've worn a lot of hats. Like, what was first of all your first job? Because I know you're a rock and roll star, but first job to how you became a contemporary artist is, that's a long timeline, but maybe kind of a synopsis, one play-by-play.
There are lots of people, not lots of people, but there are a handful of people out there that will get a good chuckle out of your calling me a rock and roll star. I'm not sure that's accurate.
I'll make sure to send it directly to them.
I wish you would, yeah. Send it to my agent. Actually, I pretty much just started making money playing music.
Okay.
And we always, we were playing around here at all the places that were available in town, and we used to tell people that we were on the Plains, Thompson Falls, Hot Springs circuit when we were in high school,
Nice.
and we were playing places like that. We'd play the Sanders County Fair, we'd just play Monk's Cave in Missoula, and there were lots of venues, and we played all that we possibly could. We were pretty much working every weekend.
That's pretty cool, right?
So that was my first job.
Okay.
And Yeah.
Great. So photography, I know, was something big after that. I mean,
Yep.
anytime I talk to, anyone my wife's age, Carly's age, Rachel and everyone else, they know you from before of being like, oh, that's Marshall Noice. So, I mean, so he had done a lot of our senior pictures and all
Yep.
that. And so you were a big influence in that. And then, stepped into contemporary art, landscape art.
Yeah. Photography was kind of a jumping off point for my landscape painting.
Okay.
When I got interested in photography and finagled my way into the darkroom at FECC and then the darkroom at the Hockaday Center so I could be in there as many hours a day as I needed to be to learn how to do it, I was interested in black and white landscape photography. That was my vision, that was my passion, that was what I was really interested in. And I was extremely fortunate to be able to spend a summer working as Ansel Adams' assistant in Carmel, California.
Oh, wow.
That was definitely a life-changing summer for me. And his influence is something that I carry with me and use almost on a daily basis. I just basically learned to see the landscape from looking at Ansel Adams photographs. And, having the opportunity to work with somebody of that caliber is pretty extraordinary. And I just lucked into it. That's kind of the way life works, really. You just, every once in a while you get lucky. But I realized fairly quickly that going to Glacier Park and other places in northwest Montana and taking landscape photographs, making the most beautiful black and white print that I possibly could, that I was capable of making, just wasn't going to pay the bills. Because it just wasn't a viable source of enough income to keep body and soul together. So I started doing commercial photography. I opened a studio, and photographing high school seniors was really creative. It was a lot of fun. I could flip through a Rolling Stone magazine and say, "Oh, I'm going to try a photograph like that the next time I have a senior come in," and it was really, really fun. And I photographed a lot of high school seniors, photographed a lot of smiling babies, photographed a lot of paintings, photographed a lot of bronzes. I kind of figured out how to photograph bronzes, and there were, I think, 3 bronze foundries in Kalispell at the time. And so I did a lot of that work. And yeah, it was an interesting life. And all the time that I was doing photography, I was painting on the side just for the love of it.
Okay. Nice. And we were talking a little bit earlier too, because it's kind of almost the story we were talking about before the podcast.
Yeah.
Just about like they kind of transitioned in because you were able to stack up quite a few paintings at one point. How did that tell me what happened with that? I mean, it's something to do with possibly a wife of yours and a mother-in-law of mine.
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of paintings because I was, I'd been just painting and putting the paintings aside, and there were a lot of them, and there were hundreds of them. And my recollection is that my wife suggested that I either find a gallery that would help me sell some of these paintings or rent a storage unit. So I opted for Plan A and loaded up the family Dodge Caravan and drove to Santa Fe and found a gallery that liked my work and wanted to represent me. Came home, loaded the van again, went to Jackson, Wyoming, and had a similar great experience there, and I was off and running. Wow. And over a period of about 3 years, I transitioned from doing photography 4 days a week and painting 2 days a week, and then it was 3 and 3, and eventually it got to the point where I had one photography job left, and fortunately we had a little piece of property overlooking Flathead Lake that we sold, and so that we had a little bit of cash reserve to make the leap from having a job that had a fairly regular income to painting pictures for a living. I mean, take that to any business school in America and tell them that that's what you're going to do. As a matter of fact, when I talked to my CPA, who's still my CPA, Dave Schultz at Jardel and Slider, and I told him that I was going to quit doing photography and I was going to start painting full time and make my living as a painter. And he said, "Well, that is a career move that will offer you less security." Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate the confidence you have in me. But it worked out, and honestly, I think that to a certain extent it worked out because it had to work out. Mm-hmm. We had 4 kids. A couple of them were getting close to college age, and I remember my friend Terry Nelson, he and I shared a painting studio in the building that we now own, where Montana Modern Fine Art is. Upstairs in what are now Airbnbs, there were 2 little rooms that were pretty remedial for rent. And for a while we rented the front building or front studio space, and for a while we rented the back one. And that's where we painted. And at one point, I overheard a conversation with Terry, and somebody was asking him, how did Marshall transition from, how did he figure out how to make a living as a painter, And Terry said, you need to understand, with Marshall, failure is not an option.
That's very true.
And I do think that it doesn't matter what you're doing. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're painting pictures, selling real estate, or golfing. You've got to have a certain skill level. You've got to have a certain skill level. There's no question about that. But once you get to that point, so much of it is just about confidence. And
practice.
And lots of practice.
And training.
Lots of practice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's no question. So, it's been a very gratifying ride so far.
Good. So, anyway, Marshall, what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was, we talked a little bit about the changes in Kalispell, but what do you think are some of the biggest changes you've seen in Kalispell, being also on these boards of downtown communities and mm-hmm. involved in the community? Maybe some of the goods and the bads, because you've seen it over 54 years.
There are both, yeah, for sure.
I bet.
Well, I guess turning back the hands of time, downtown Kalispell was the retail center of the valley. It was the retail center of northwest Montana. And it all existed between Center Street and 4th and First Avenue East, First Avenue West, and Main Street. It was just all jammed right into that little chunk of real estate. And, there was nothing north of town. There was no Kmart. There was no Shopco, and Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, Costco didn't even exist. So it was a much more vital shopping community, just due to the nature of the beast. And there are, you can look at any small town in America and see that same transition from all of the shopping is downtown to none of the shopping is downtown.
Yeah, that's big.
And so that was a huge difference. I think that, as I mentioned, the college being downtown, the hospital being close to downtown, and Eastside Brick over by Hedges School is where the hospital was at the time.
Right by my old house.
Right by your old house.
And yours.
And my old house. Yep. So those were significant changes. And then as the growth, and I don't want to use the word sprawl in a derogatory sense, but as the town kind of grew north and more retail went away from downtown to those big box stores, that changed the retail environment, and it kind of allowed, due to the fact that there wasn't so much demand for retail space, for more service-oriented businesses to move into the downtown buildings.
Okay.
And if I could turn back the hands of time, what the two things that I would love to see, number one, I'd love to see the college back downtown again. I mean, that was such a it just changed the culture of that of downtown Kalispell immensely when the students went away. And in fact, when the college trustees were thinking about abandoning the buildings that the college existed in and building a real college, they had two plans drawn up by two different architects. Architect Design Group designed the plan that now exists, the college north of town. And another architect in town, Ken Williams, did a presentation of, okay, what would the college look like if we stayed downtown? And just, redid the buildings and were able to function right downtown and stay put. And had that occurred, downtown Kalispell would have been a very different downtown than it is today. Mm-hmm. If the college were on Main Street and or in the business district. So that was a huge change, and I think that I would love to live in the town that kept the college downtown, mm-hmm. as opposed to moving north. And it's easy to see why that decision is viable, and there are lots of good things about the decision of moving the college north, but none of them were good for downtown Kalispell. Okay. And the other change that I would make is there were a group of doctors who owned the piece of property where Super One and Sherwin-Williams Whitefish Credit Union are, just off of First Avenue East in downtown Kalispell. And this was a point in time where the old hospital, the community had just outgrown it. There had to be a new hospital. And these guys worked very diligently and had a really solid plan to build that new hospital where Super One is now. And that too, when you think about all of the development up by the hospital, with all of the other clinics that are there and all of the other buildings that have gone up around the hospital and would have gone up around the hospital regardless of where the hospital was built. What a vital downtown we would have if the college and the hospital were both right downtown.
Wow. I
mean, we would have had 2 parking garages 20 years ago. Easily. And it just would have been I think it would have been a more interesting downtown to own a business in. Mm-hmm. And I think it would have been good for downtown Kalispell if needless to say, we would have had a parking problem. I mean, we would have had a serious parking problem. And people are, we hear about that from time to time. Oh, I don't like to go downtown. It's so hard to get a parking place. Honestly, we don't have a parking problem in downtown Kalispell. No. It's you can always park closer to the store that you want to go to in downtown Kalispell than you can park going to a certain department at Walmart. If you count the number of steps that it takes you to get from your car in the Walmart parking lot to the electronics section of Walmart, you're farther away than you are anywhere in Kalispell. I don't care what store you want to go to. But it's a perception. People drive into the parking lot of the store that they're going to, and they're there. Mm-hmm. And but anyway, those are. If I could turn back the hands of time and somebody were going to make me king of Kalispell for a little while, I'd make those 2 changes. I'd put the college back downtown, and I'd put the hospital downtown, with all of the problems that would be created by that density.
Well, it pushes for change.
It pushes for change,
and that's the thing that's kind of neat about that, is that it would put that pressure on. I mean, we're human beings and we can figure things out, and it would make it would probably prosper.
But here's another what if. Okay, so if I'm the king of Kalispell and we've turned back the hands of time, think what a community it would be if Kalispell had been built where Summers is.
Ooh.
Beautiful boardwalk along the north shore of the lake, homes up in the hills surrounding downtown Kalispell. That would have been. I mean, you think about a community like Coeur d'Alene, for instance.
Yeah.
Kalispell. We just need to move this thing 7 miles south, and get the college down there too.
Well, that kind of segues into my other question too. Like, where do you? Because I've seen a lot of progress in downtown Kalispell since when I moved here, it was kind of starting to move up in 2005 and 6, and then we had a little bit of recession, and it was a lot of them went vacant. I felt like it was kind of a not a depression, but it was just it was rough during that time. So. But we're rebuilding. I'm seeing even having the Parkline Trail. That's a huge deal.
Yep.
People building condos along that.
Yep.
Where do you see with the not just the boards, but where do you see the vision of Kalispell going right now in the next 10 years?
Well, the Business Improvement District, and I'm still on that board, but I'm no longer president of the board. I think that the focus that group has, and the focus that the Kalispell City Council has, is we're very growth minded. I mean, we want to see growth. We think growth is a good thing. We're looking for greater density. We'd love to see lots of people living in downtown Kalispell. And if you get it's eventually you have to get to the tipping point. And when you get to that tipping point and all of a sudden you have, there are enough people in this community that it will all of a sudden support that activity or that business, or we can do this because we've got all of these people that would like to do that in this location. So I think we're going to see more density. I think we're going to see more successful businesses. I hope and I believe that we will eliminate all of the vacant lots in the Business Improvement District that are owned primarily by the city of Kalispell and used for parking lots. I think that particularly that vacant lot in front of Valley Bank on Main Street and Third.
It is Third, I believe.
It's just reprehensible that a town as vital as Kalispell has a vacant lot on Main Street. Are you kidding me? Would that happen in Bozeman?
No.
Or
right now.
Bend? Or Boise? No way. And we can't. We've got to get rid of it. And I think that I think that the Charles Hotel is going to be a huge uptick in what's going on in our town. All of the development that is either in the works or on paper, it just seems really, really positive to me. And will there be growing pains? Yeah, there are going to be growing pains. Any change is hard. Any change is scary. But, a parking garage behind the Kalispell Grand Hotel, what a huge plus for our community to finally get enough parking so that the employees don't have to rock and roll their cars. They can, put it in the garage and leave the spaces in front of the buildings, in front of the businesses for customers.
This is actually a new question just popped in my head because we're talking about the Charles Hotel and downtown and even the Kalispell Grand being purchased. And there has been some talk about the mall because the mall right now, big space, was it? Maybe I'm way off. 300 square feet is the whole thing, something around that. I don't know. Am I wrong?
Well, you're wrong. It's not 300 square feet.
300,000 square feet is what I meant.
I don't know how big it is, but it's big enough for a lot of cool stuff. And every time it just comes up all the time. What's going to happen at the mall? And I have no idea what's going to happen at the mall. I can think of a lot of things that I think would be really positive in that location, like a indoor community youth activity center, with indoor soccer fields and basketball and lacrosse and
Like an ice ribbon, maybe even.
ice. Absolutely, yeah. I could see repurpose it and turn it into a hockey rink and see if we can get a minor league hockey team to come to Kalispell
Downtown.
like the downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, the parking is there.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the hotel,
Yeah.
and let the businesses between the hotel and Herberger's morph into something that would be even better if there are people coming to town for a hockey tournament or a kids indoor soccer event in the wintertime. I think that there's a lot of potential there. Somebody's going to come up with the right idea and the right offer, and there's something good is going to happen there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no clue what it is. If I were the mall owners, I'd be busting out every single wall on the north side of that building and just putting opening my arms to the Parkline Trail.
Yep.
It's just it's such a the Parkline Trail is that's a biggie.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden we have lots of possibilities and opportunities that didn't exist before. The city worked so hard and diligently to make that thing happen. It's going to be a great change.
I agree. So Glacier National Park. That's where I want to go next because it's one of my loves, and I know it's a big part of your life.
Yeah.
And I know you've hiked a lot more trails than I have up there.
But you've climbed a lot more peaks than I have.
Well, we can balance that out.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about your love there.
A glacier. When I moved to Kalispell in '68, I learned that there were 1,000 miles of trails in Glacier, and I thought, I want to hike all 1,000 miles of trails in Glacier, and I haven't even come close. But every once in a while, I get on a trail that I haven't been on before, and I can check one more off. But I spent a lot of time in Glacier. I feel more at home in Glacier than I do any place on the planet. It's a very comfortable place for me to be.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate to be able to spend 13 when I was working as a photographer. I taught photography workshops for the Glacier Institute for 13 summers.
Wow.
And that was a lot of fun. And we did stuff in the backcountry. We'd go into Granite Park Chalet for a week, and just base camp out of there. And it was an extraordinary experience. And I feel really fortunate to have been able to spend more than my fair share of time in Glacier.
Yeah. It's a little bit different now. It's
a little bit different now.
It's just harder to get in.
Yeah,
to be creative.
Our park is kind of getting loved to death.
That's a good way to put. Oh, I like that. It is getting loved to death. It got discovered, and some of that's okay because I want those people to see that beauty as well. However, sometimes I do get frustrated because all I want to go do is bag a peak, and it's hard to get up there at 5 a.m.
It is. It's a different challenge, and I think that there are things that, in my opinion, the park should do right now, and if someone were to make me the king of Glacier Park for a day,
there you go.
I would make some changes. And the first thing I do is, and there probably will be people who will turn off this blog the minute I say this, but I think that the Going to the Sun Road should be closed to personal vehicle traffic during the peak season. I think that July, August, maybe the first half of September, just nothing but shuttles, run shuttles, and that would have a huge positive effect on the problem. I mean, part of the problem is the people. I mean, there are just lots and lots of people going to Glacier. Mm-hmm. But I really think that thinking about the experience of enjoying Glacier, the bigger problem is all the vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there are other national parks that only function on shuttles during the peak season. And I think that's I'm sure that it's being considered. I'm sure that the Park Service is talking about it. They may have a plan to implement it now, for all I know.
Well, it'd be very efficient.
I think that's what's going to have to happen in order for the park to be a little more like it was before, a little more functional for a visitor. And for crying out loud, it's beautiful in the park in late September, early October, and go ahead and put the top down on the Porsche and drive the Go Into the Sun Road after.
Yeah, exactly.
We did
that
people.
Last year with Sarston and Carly, and that was a beautiful, windy, but very, very beautiful.
Yeah. Well,
evening.
hey, St. Mary Lake, baby, we need wind over there, right?
It's always windy.
It's not windy. We're not where we think we are.
Exactly.
But Glacier's a big part of my love affair with Northwest Montana is all about Glacier.
Well, let's go back to the beginning a little bit. One thing I did hear, and I think you've told me a story about this, but when you arrived at FHS, Flathead High School in 1968, I think your dress attire was maybe a little bit different than people here. Tell me a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, well, I didn't move here from LA or New York City. I moved here from Moorhead, Minnesota, which is not the fashion epicenter of the universe. But having said that, I think I did have a little different approach to dress than the typical high school guy at Flathead. My hair was way longer than anybody else's. And, pretty much most of the guys had on their new Levi's, their new school clothes.
Yeah.
And I had on a pair of brown wool bell bottoms that I loved that had these just huge bell bottoms on them. And I had a pair of platform shoes that had a hollow plexiglass heel that was filled with water, and there was a live goldfish in each shoe. True fact. And so I did attract a little attention on the first day of school at Flathead, dressed like that. Matter of fact, one of the guys who eventually became one of my best friends said, Marshall, the first time I laid eyes on you, that first day of school, all I wanted to do was beat the crap out of you. I guess he didn't like my looks.
Oh,
but things were a little different, and I was a lot different.
Well, but for good reason. That's the creative, what I see in you, and the love of this, the Flathead Valley, and I like that you mentioned the trifecta and the, where else, how many places in the world can you sail, ski, and hike a 10,000-foot peak in the same place?
It's true.
There's not many,
yeah.
And you've said that to me, and I was like, that's a really, really good point, and especially when we're on the sailboat, so.
Yep.
Anyway, Marshall, this has been great. It's been enlightening.
It's been fun.
And I heard some stories that I've never heard before, and we've talked a lot over the past 20 years.
Well, when you when you get to be 70 years old, you can sure as hell reminisce.
That is for sure. That's for sure.
Lots of memories.
The real important thing, so how do we find you, locally, online? Please give us some of those tags so people can find you and see your beautiful artwork.
Yeah, well, the business that we have at 127 Main Street in what was, back in 1968, the Jordan Cafe, which made a great burger. I would like to have one of those right now. But we're at 127 Main Street in downtown Kalispell, montanamodernfineart.com.
Okay.
Take a look online. My work is shown in a number of galleries across the country in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, Telluride, Colorado, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have a show coming up in Santa Fe, New Mexico that opens on the 8th of July. And I hope you can all join me for that.
Good point. Buy
your airline tickets and come have fun with me in Santa Fe on the 8th of July. So, stop in the gallery, take a look at it. It's not just my work. There are 20 or more artists represented, most of whom have local contacts. They don't all live all the time, but they all have roots in the area. So yeah, it's a very diverse and astounding collection of art.
Well, I actually was looking at the sign the other day, and it was fiber, jewelry, sculpture, paint. There's just all these different mediums, or mediums. I said that wrong. However, yeah, it's a beautiful gallery, and I'm not biased,
and no black and white photographs.
No black and white photographs there. Awesome. Marshall, thank you so much. We have
Thank you,
Marshall
Austin.
Noice. My pleasure. And I hope this was enlightening to me. And I just appreciate it. I can't wait to do more podcasts. Folks, find us, like, subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Music. We're going to be on YouTube as well. Please give me a like. Also, maybe direct message me. Let me know how this show goes. Who else do you want to see in the community? What kind of stories do you want to have told? What kind of goals do you have? Do you have someone that needs to share their story as well? We'd love to help do that. Austin Baumgarten with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana. Over and out.